As I have mentioned, although you may consider it illegitimate to grind on enemies, and you may prefer for a harder solo run in which you start out with no grinding, by the very nature of playing solo later on in the game, you'll find that just getting through auxiliary battles ends up being like grinding, because you don't even need to grind on a priest with a broken weapon. You can just sit there, and if 20 enemies attack you, then you end up getting a lot of XP for whichever class you're trying to master or skill. So if you really think about it, if you wanted to increase the challenge of the game by avoiding all auxiliary battles, you could still do the chapter battles and take on every single enemy, and provided that you have a more limited focused scope of skills that you're trying to maximize, you can have a traditional kind of go straight to Wyvern Lord or straight to Bow Knight and plan for it the whole game, and you could still probably run a pretty effective build just by playing the game in a more legitimate way. Maybe have one secondary skill that you're going to use. If you wanted to amp up the difficulty further, you could just altogether avoid training sessions every week where you lecture the students and you give them skill ups no matter what, because you are the professor. If they have a goal set, they're going to learn a little bit of XP every single week. There is little to be done about that, as Edelgard would say. But you can still make your character focused into one specific build and get something like Wyvern Lord with AVO, or a female character, for example, can get to Falcon Knight and possibly maximize the Falcon Might for Defiant AVO, Evasion Ring. You could have Alert Stance Plus, and all these things put together, combined with a killer weapon, maybe certifying for the Dancer class, you can still pull a really effective solo character together, as long as you can attack enough enemies and have enough combat engagements in a legitimate, non-artificial way. That is to say, organic. You could still get through this game solo. It's just going to be more rough around the edges on early White Clouds, because you won't be going into it with certain advantages. The Armored Knight, for example, is an example of a class that is strong early on, because classes have minimal upgrades that they do to certain statistics that can be helpful. A lot of people have discussed making a humorous Fortress Knight Lysithea, or Armored Knight Lysithea, because where she might have terrible defense, the class, if she can class into it with adequate skill training, will bring her to a level where minimally she can have like maybe defense on par with what a typical physical unit might have. So a class like Armored Knight and Fortress Knight, the classes that give you a lot of defense benefit you more early in the game. They're quite strong, but a lot of the advantages that come with late game units, for example, a war master, that is, can crit you because they have a bonus to crit with their class just like you do. Well, there are plenty of enemies that do so much damage that it might be better to dodge them, or it might be better to take them out preemptively. Moving on, where Archer hit plus 20 is something that you can combine with somebody like Ignatz, who has hit plus 20 innately, and this can overcome the drop-off in effectiveness for a Bow Knight on Maddening, to give you the ability to hit far and to hit accuracy despite the penalties towards accuracy on Maddening. Then another perk that is practical is Fiendish Bow for a mage. Fiendish Blow basically does the same exact thing as Death Blow. And it's good to stack onto Lysithea because when she's attacking, it can help guarantee a one-hit kill. There are perks or abilities Lysithea has and a couple other people like Luna. Luna allows you to completely ignore res, and it's quite potent, and it makes up for that with relatively few uses. It's a dark magic spell, and it'll cut right through mages that should normally be able to deflect your anima magic, which is black magic versus dark magic. Basically, the dark mage with his poison strike, it's kind of like, It's a pain when the enemy has it with archers and they really stack it upon you. It is really rough on chapters 5 and 6 through your first playthrough, but it's not that big of a deal when you have it. That's how it often works in Maddening. Then you got Brawler. Unarmed combat just helps you save weapon uses for a physical character, provided that you're kind of relying on physical, like, fists. If you're using fists rather than with their low weight, like a sword. But later on, if you're going for being an AVO king, then swords are just not... You don't want to use fists, you just want to use swords, basically. In the advanced classes, Sword Master is a very good one. Very practical because it's got sword crit plus 10 innately. And this alone, combined with the S rank sword crit plus 10, will allow you to take stuff like your Keyhole Wyvern Co. or Fraldarius Battalion, and you get a ton of crit from all this put together with your Wodow plus. I mean, you're basically made critting all the time. Defiant SDR strength for hero, that's kind of like, meh. You don't really need it. Like, it's more practical to have Defiant crit, maybe. Depends on the situation, because Defiant crit is like a slightly less effective version of Wrath, and you have enough crit in the game anyway, so it doesn't matter. You should be able to just kill enemies with your own strength and your own crit, and not have to get down to 25%, have a slot taken up. It's not something I would consider worth it. On a solo playthrough where you're smashing right through people, like with Dimitri, Assassins, lethality is not that great. But it can be a practical class because it mandatorily often raises your speed through its, nature of the class by a ton. Paladin with Aegis, and then there's Pavis with Fortress Knight. These are both garbage. The Warrior has Axe Crit plus 10. You're mostly getting this for Wrath. There's Seal Defense with the Wyvern Rider, which is practical in a group situation mostly. Hunter's Volley with Sniper is extremely effective. It's a player phase oriented thing though, so I would mainly use it on bosses if I was going solo. But on a regular playthrough, you can combine this with a killer bow if you're willing to use one and just really rack up that damage all in one hit. If you have a high strength character with being a sniper. It's only available when you're a sniper though, so keep that in mind. There are a couple perks like that, like Paraceline with Dimitri's special class, Wind God with Barbarossa, Flickering Flower with the Emperor class. Warlock gives you black magic uses times 2, which is really good because for a mage, a dedicated mage, you want to have more magic uses on the map, but it's not good for Lysithea because she uses dark magic exclusively. Dark Bishop is a male class. You get Miasma again, and you get Life Taker. Life Taker is actually player phase oriented, as I found out. So it's not really that good on a solo maddening playthrough. Finally, you've got... I will discuss a little bit of Cindered Shadows. I've not played this DLC, but just judging from how the classes work, I think you could benefit from the Dark Flyer class the most with its ability to fly, that mobility, and to be able to cast high-level spells, but of course, unless you have high AVO, it's going to be player phase oriented. It'll essentially just add another vector of mobility that you might have already had with the Canto of the Dark Knight. Of course, you've got Brawl Avoid 20 with the War Cleric and the War Monk. This is very good because this allows you to run a build with good AVO that uses your fist instead of your sword, and you might be able to get even better AVO. So you can use Killer Knuckles and do pretty well with this. The Trickster has kind of like a chaotic aspect to it, but he has the ability to use magic at half uses. I'd say it's a decent class, kind of in the middle. It's kind of a jack of all trades. Finally, we got the master classes. Of course, Falcon Knight, Defiant AVO, that's what you want. If you got a female character. Defiant Crit from a Wyvern Lord, not so good. Because it could be good, but like I said, you already got Wrath, and you should have enough crit by now anyway, no matter what. The most important thing about this class is great growths in general. Then you got Mortal Servant, which is a meme class, if you just want to look like a anime samurai. But he's got magic usage. If you have really high magic stat and you want to use swords, maybe you could use it if you're trying to torture yourself. Great Knight, another meme class, but I've thought that you could use this class with the S+ rank of something like not having a weakness, like Armor Effect Null, Cavalry Effect Null, or the Raphael Gem, and you could turn this into an effective late game face tank class. Dark Knight, as I've said, that's just using your Tome Fair and your magic, and having the ability to Canto. It's mostly a late game thing for a magic artillery like Lysithea, Annette, somebody like Linhardt, and then Holy Knight, respectively, Linhardt, same deal, but you might just put that in Mercedes or a dedicated healer. On a full playthrough, independent of having something like healing focus, it's very practical to have your dedicated healer who might have physic like Mercedes and just have them going around using Fortify. Consider the advantages of the magic that somebody like Flame has with Rescue. It's helped me a lot of times. Sometimes I purposely use it to pull a unit towards me to get them further on the map in the direction I need them to go, or to take them back after a tactical strike on an enemy like Mycen or some Ballista user or Hubert in Chapter 12. That's a very practical magic. And Fortify I used a lot on my final Oath of the Dagger of the first playthrough. I've already spoken of the practicality of quick riposte and guaranteeing a kill on any given enemy. However, the only thing I'll say about quick riposte is that if you have good enough AVO, you don't even need to kill the enemy in one turn. It's not a critical matter, but speaking of criticals, you get critical plus 20 with this class when you're using the class. So you can pretty much just get up there and guarantee that you're going to crit with 80-90% critical chance with a Wodow plus. Finally, we got the Gremmery. I like this class. People say different things about it. I found it to be very effective with Annette, Lysithea, Mercedes, female dedicated mage users, that they'll get bonus magic use. So that means you could use them like 40 times for attacks, 40 turns, attack phase, 60. Depends on which magic you're using. You have to be a judge of the accuracy of certain dark magics, with Miasma being the best, and then Hades and stuff like that, and Luna being lower, but being tactically more effective at sometimes. You have to look at the combat forecast and gain a good kind of natural, intuitive understanding of what is the best time on a typical playthrough to do an attack with a certain unit. Do you want to use up this resource that you only get once a battle? That is the essence of this as a strategy game.